What if I told you that the world's most successful ride-sharing company built its empire by systematically breaking laws in over 300 cities? And that their secret weapon wasn't technology, it was deception. Uber didn't just disrupt transportation, they rewrote the rules of business by ignoring every rule that existed, from bribing officials to using fake apps that fooled regulators. From covering up massive data breaches to allegedly ordering hits on competitors' drivers. This is the untold story of how a simple app became a global criminal enterprise worth billions. By the end of this video, you'll never look at that innocent ride request the same way again. In 2009, two entrepreneurs named Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp had a simple idea: tap a button, get a ride. But what started as Uber Cab in San Francisco quickly became something far more sinister. Within months, they received their first cease and desist order. Most companies would have stopped. Uber doubled down. Their strategy was elegantly simple: launch first, deal with laws later. They called it principled confrontation, but it was really just organized law-breaking with a PR team. Kalanick himself admitted they were building a pirate company that would ask for forgiveness, not permission. But breaking taxi regulations was just the beginning. In 2017, we discovered Uber's most shocking secret, a program called Greyball. This wasn't just software. It was a sophisticated deception engine designed to identify and fool government officials. Here's how it worked. Uber would use credit card data, device information, and even social media profiles to identify potential regulators. When these officials tried to book rides, Greyball would show them fake cars on a fake map, ensuring they could never actually catch Uber drivers in the act of operating illegally. They used this digital camouflage in Portland, Boston, Paris, and dozens of other cities. Government inspectors would watch phantom vehicles circle endlessly on their screens, while real Uber cars operated freely just blocks away. As Uber expanded globally, their tactics became increasingly desperate. Internal documents revealed a systematic bribery operation spanning continents. In Indonesia, they allegedly paid off officials to raid competitor offices. In India, they established slush funds to pay police and bureaucrats. In Russia, they literally handed briefcases full of cash to government officials. The company even had a dedicated team called the Political Action Committee, not for legitimate lobbying, but for coordinating these illegal payments. Former employees described rooms where executives would plan which officials to target and how much. In 2014, Uber launched Operation Slog against their main competitor Lyft. The plan was military-grade corporate warfare. They recruited armies of contractors to create fake Lyft accounts, book rides they'd never take, and then cancel at the last minute. This tied up Lyft drivers for hours, costing the company millions, while gathering intelligence on driver locations and passenger habits. But it got worse, much worse. Internal emails revealed that Uber executives in France actually hired members of Hell's Angels motorcycle gang to intimidate competitors. Yes, you heard that right. A Silicon Valley startup was paying literal bikers to threaten rival drivers. The Angels would show up at competitor taxi stands and convince drivers to switch to Uber. When that didn't work, they'd get more persuasive. Several drivers reported being followed home and receiving death threats. Meanwhile, Uber was using its own platform as a surveillance network. Executives routinely used GodView internal tracking software to spy on customers, journalists, and even their own employees' personal lives. They tracked a BuzzFeed reporter's location without permission. They monitored celebrities' movements for gossip. One executive even suggested using the system to dig up dirt on journalists who wrote negative stories about the company. But Uber's most shocking crime might be one they claim they never committed. In several countries, including France and India, taxi drivers who refused to join Uber were found dead, under suspicious circumstances. While no direct evidence links Uber to these deaths, the timing was eerily coincidental. In France alone, 7 traditional taxi drivers died in apparent accidents within months of major Uber campaigns in their cities. Families of the deceased claim they received warnings to join Uber or face consequences in the weeks before their deaths. Everything changed in 2022 when a massive leak called the Uber Files exposed over 124,000 internal documents. These weren't rumors or speculation. This was hard evidence of a decade-long criminal conspiracy. The documents revealed that Uber had secretly lobbied world leaders, including Emmanuel Macron and Olaf Scholz, used stealth technology to hide data during police raids, deliberately sent drivers into violent protests to generate sympathy, created shell companies to hide money flows and avoid taxes. Most shocking of all, when drivers were attacked during protests, Uber executives celebrated. Internal messages showed them literally cheering when their own drivers were assaulted, because it generated media coverage that painted Uber as victims rather than lawbreakers. Then came the data breach that revealed Uber's true nature. In 2016, hackers stole personal information from 57 million users and 600,000 drivers. Instead of reporting it immediately as required by law, Uber paid the hackers $100,000 to destroy the data and stay quiet. For an entire year, they concealed this massive breach while continuing to collect sensitive information from unsuspecting users. When the truth finally emerged, it cost them $148 million in fines, a price they apparently considered worth paying to avoid accountability. The final nail came from secret recordings of CEO Travis Kalanick made by his own executives. In these tapes, Kalanick openly admits to criminal activity, saying, "We're in a political campaign and the candidate is Uber, and we're just going to build a massive political machine." He goes on to describe their business model as taking over cities by overwhelming them with cars and drivers before they can react. When an executive asks about the legality, Kalanick's response was chilling. "We're not asking for permission, we're asking for forgiveness." Today, Uber operates in over 900 metropolitan areas worldwide and is valued at over $120 billion. They've paid billions in fines, settled hundreds of lawsuits, and Kalanick was eventually forced out as CEO. But the fundamental question remains, was it worth it? Uber proved that in the modern economy, you can build a fortune by systematically breaking laws, as long as you're willing to pay the eventual price. They normalize the idea that disruption means ignoring regulations rather than improving technology. The most disturbing part? It worked. Despite everything we now know about their criminal methods, millions of people still tap that button every day, choosing convenience over conscience. Uber's rise wasn't just the story of a successful startup. It was a masterclass in how to build a criminal empire in plain sight, one ride at a time. But Uber wasn't the only tech giant using illegal tactics to dominate their industry.